Evening's Full and Abundant Life radio program with Dr. Claudius Davis. Just to remind you that the Full and Abundant Life radio program is an interactive program. You can call the number 457-9997 for those of you for the field. It's 1784. That's the area code 1784 457 9997. Or you can send us a WhatsApp message at 457-9994. Different ways to get in contact with Dr. Claudius Davis on the Full and Abundant Life radio program. Without further ado, I turn you over to Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, good night and
Uh,
welcome.
Good night, sir. It's certainly a privilege to be here again tonight with on the program. And like you, as you mentioned, that program is presented each Wednesday night right here and WeFM from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Of course, this is an interactive program, and there are some numbers. Of course, let me find these numbers. There are three numbers that you can certainly use to share your thoughts and ideas. One is a WhatsApp number, of course, which is 784-457-9994. That's the WhatsApp number. And I think you can only send a message through that number, of course, a text. And of course, there are two other numbers that you can use to call and express. 457-9997. 457-9997. And then the other number is 532-9997. And I think that those two, that last number is probably a Digicel number, which is 532-9997. That's
They can also try calling the WhatsApp as well.
wow, I didn't know that. You can also call the WhatsApp number, which is the 784-457-9994. That's the WhatsApp number that you certainly can use as well in order to express your thoughts and your ideas. And we certainly would appreciate you doing that. Last week, we started talking about how to cast out demons. And of course, I did get a lot of some positive comments, but also there were some comments to the fact that I guess the implication was that we don't have demons like we let's describe it in the Bible. So the argument is that with the ending of the first century, somehow there seemed to be no real evidence of demonic um, uh, uh, what should I say? No evidence of demonic forces in the way in which it was demonstrated in the New Testament. So, of course, I think that there are a lot of discomfort. I think because of the modern world in which we live, that not only do we deny demonic force, but we also deny the religious forces, the God force. The fact that God does exist. So there's been a debate over the centuries. However, I think that it is very clear in the Bible that demons do exist, and what's interesting for me is how people readily accept the presence of the Holy Spirit, but at the same time they completely deny the evidence of satanic force in our world, and I think that's a real contradiction. How we kind of pride ourselves how God is with us and the Holy Spirit lives within us, but at the same time we don't seem to see the other side of that. And certainly, if it is true that demonic force no longer exists, then I guess we're good to go. Because then the question really would be, well, if there are no demonic forces, if satanic forces are no longer relevant and no longer exist, then maybe we don't need Christ, because obviously we can do it on our own at that particular point. So it's sort of a ridiculous argument, of course. And so I just wanted to continue the discussion that we had last time, and to continue to bring home the point that much of what we see in our society today that we sometimes have, psychiatric labels for, social labels for, political labels for, we tend to explain things legally what we think it is. And simply put, it may just simply be demonic behaviors that are powered by Satan, and therefore that is why we see the continuous inhuman actions against humanity, some of the most brutal forms of killings and behaviors that we see. And so the question is, how do we explain those things? And so my attempt was to get us to look more closely at some of the biblical teachings and some of the things that God has really taught us through example, through the reading of the scriptures, that does in fact say that there are other forces other than forces of good that's operating in our world today. And so I think the yes, it is true that the presence of Christ, the coming of Christ, did in essence limit satanic activities, because once God is in residence and through the Holy Spirit and His will, the written word of God, then we're able to push back against satanic forces. Not only just push back, but rather to emerge victorious, triumphantly, and to be able to stand tall despite the efforts of Satan and his instruments and his agents in order to undermine, our efforts. And so we really need to begin to look at some of that. So tonight, I truly want to invite your discussions. And of course, I wish some of the discussion that you were sending me via text, that you would have also sent them, via in terms of actually present them here tonight by yourself, because I think our audience would have benefited from, your actually input in the discussions that we're having here tonight. So that's kind of where I want to go with our discussion, but I want to kind of limit my sharing. I really want to invite the audience to take an active role tonight in terms of sharing, their thoughts, in terms of, sharing their thoughts in terms of what they believe, how do they see this demonic force, whether or not they feel it exists, and to begin to talk about how, how would it manifest itself? How do we know this? And I will cite some passages of scriptures, primarily during the ministry of Jesus, to really ask honestly, how would we have interpret what we saw then that Jesus was experiencing in our day and time? If you were to interview a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, in terms of what are their impression, how would they diagnose this particular behavior? And so that's what I'd like to do tonight, is to look at some of these basic passages and to ask ourselves. Last time we emphasized the Second Corinthians passage, and I just want you to review that one, which is Second Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 through 6, where Paul talks about his ministry. But in verses 3, it says, and even if the gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. But verse 4 says, in whose case the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelieving, so that they might not see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. So it would almost be an insult for someone to say that there are no satanic forces in our world today. Because, I mean, when you look at passages like this, that is very clear. I mean, how do we? I guess the question tonight might be: is the satanic world, has it become extinct? Has Satan gone out of for whatever reason? We have many things that have become extinct in our world that used to be and no longer is. So is that one of those things that somehow Satan just ceased to be, just somehow become extinct? what has happened? And at least one of the person did say that he is in chains. Somehow he is in prison, and therefore, because he is, therefore his activities no longer can touch us, and so on. But I think when you look at the 21st century, I think you have to conclude that Satan is in fact loose, and that he is very much a part of our society, communities. As I mentioned last time, that Satan has infiltrate every aspect of our society, every aspect of our interactions, every aspect of our institutions. And if you look at our judicial system, if you look at our financial world, financial institutions, if you look at even of our medical institutions, if you look at of our religious institutions, I mean, you look at our homes, you look at our educational systems. I mean, every one of our institutions seem to be moving further and further away from the biblical pattern that God has established that would like for us to put in place. And we're moving more and more liberal every day. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the energy? What is it that's really driving this sort of a evolution that we see taking place in our society in terms of our morality, our sense of ethics, our sense of who we are? I mean, all of those boundaries are literally being moved. We are rewriting our sense of right and wrong every day. And so, what's the force behind it? Who's generating this? Who is the culprit? Who is the organizer behind all of this? And I'm here tonight to say to you that the scripture says that the real culprit behind all of what we're seeing, the level of injustices, the level of oppression, the level of decency that is happening, the shamelessness, that it becomes so pervasive, become part of our culture, that is driven by satanic forces. So that is kind of where that I want for us to go with this tonight, and for us to understand that for God, God, he is light. There are two forces. There's the forces of good, and there's the forces of darkness. There is light and there is darkness. I'm using those in terms of metaphors, of course. And I'm saying to us that we have to decide. We have to, first of all, not only have to decide the choices that we're going to make, but we have to make a decision in terms of being able to identify it. And I think part of the problem, I think, that is happening with us today is that we become our brain, our mind has become so darkened, so infiltrated by satanic forces that we no longer can identify, the real issues that is driving what's happening in our society today. And so because we sort of like become numb, and we kind of like just moving along with the flow. But as we're moving along with the flow, everything around us is changing, but it's changing in such a way that Satan is becoming more evident. He's becoming more controlled. So let me start out by looking. I want to take you back, and especially for those of you who are clinicians, for those of you who work in mental health, and for those of you who work in counseling, in education, counseling, mental health, and other areas of human behavior. I want you to lend me your attention as we look at some of these passages, and I want you to begin to do your own assessment on these passages. And so the passage that I want for us to begin with tonight is, and I want to certainly welcome Sister Estelle Brown. It's a privilege to have you here with us tonight. It's nice seeing you, Juliet. It's also nice to have you with us, Yolanda, of course. It's a pleasure to have you here with us as well. Stephanie, it's great to have you with us here tonight. So anyway, so I want to take you to Mark chapter 5. And I want to sort of, for us to walk through this. And let's be honest as we go through these passages. And this is a situation. It says in Mark chapter 5 and verse 2, when he got out of the boat, and immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him, and he had been dwelling among the tombs. In other words, this man lived in the cemetery. This is where he lived. And then it went on to say that, and no one was able to bind him anymore. In other words, the phrase bind him anymore, it means like people had become frustrated. They had done everything they could to control this man, but it had exhausted everything. It was not possible for them. Then it says, even with chains, they put chains around this man. And because he had become, he was put in shackles and in chains, and then he would be able to break the chains, be able to get out of them. So it was almost impossible to control this man who lived in the cemetery. And then it says in verse 4, and no one was strong enough to subdue this man. And I want for you to imagine today in the 21st century, a man is in the cemetery. And the police, of course, sometimes when I was reading this, I was thinking, well, maybe if this was a black man and one of the New York City police officer, obviously it wouldn't be so much a problem because they would just shoot him, But then I thought to myself, I can't really be thinking that way. But the point is that this man was a menace to society. And he was in the grave and he was molesting other people. What I mean, harassing people. And it seemed like the community was powerless to do something with this man. And so it says here, and chains, and then right. And the chains had been torn apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. Verse 5 says, certainly night and day he was screaming among the tombs and the mountains, and was gashing himself with stones. In other words, the man was self-mutilating. I mean, so I want us to, I'm painting this picture because I want for us to understand, if I were to relate this to one of our psychiatrists today, or our psychologists today, and I say, here's a man in the cemetery, he's screaming every day, he's cutting himself, self-mutilating. What do you think? And obviously they're going to say that this is a man who is suffering with a psychotic delusion. He's psychotic, maybe schizophrenia. I don't know what it is, maybe a bipolar disorder. He's manic. And so he's crazy. He's out of his, the layman would say he's crazy. He's loony. The elevator isn't going all the way upstairs. I mean, we would use all kinds of colloquial terms to describe this man, but the professionals would put fancy labels on schizophrenia, psychotic disorder, but eventually they're going to say that he's a danger to himself and he's a danger to society. Therefore, we have to put him away. And of course, back then in the first century, they attempted everything to put this man away. But it says he was so powerful that even when they tie him up with chains, that he would break the chains and he would be screaming. Just today, I was at my work, and a gentleman was just screaming to the top of his lungs. I mean, he was just yelling and screaming. So I turned to one of the officers and I said, how do you sit here and this man all day and night just screaming to the top of his lungs? And what about all the other people who have to sleep next to him all night? Well, of course, he's in a position where he's in a special place because of a mental disorder, obviously. And so what I'm saying to us is, Jesus, who we say is the master teacher, he is the one with all wisdom. So let us look to see how Jesus is going to define this particular situation. Again, let me describe the symptoms. The symptoms are, this is a man, he's homeless. First of all, he's homeless. Let's understand that. This is a man, as a matter of fact, when I lived in Jamaica, there used to be on Mona Heights, in Mona, at the aqueduct area there. There used to be a man who used to run that area, and he used to be nude, naked, and he used to do some of the most vile thing on that road, and he used to be so offensive to women driving by in their cars. He would run behind the cars. He would do all kinds of ugly things, take his clothes off, and so on. And the diagnosis, obviously, one, he was homeless and he was crazy. Here we have in the Bible a similar situation of a man who is homeless. He's living in the cemetery, and he is harassing the community, harassing people, where people are literally afraid of him. The law enforcement people was unable to even restrain him or to even do anything with him. And then not only that, we have another scenario where the man is now self-mutilating, taking stones. It says it right here. He's gashing himself with stones till he bleeds. He's literally doing stuff if he was doing in our society. We would put him in a psychiatric facility. We probably would put him in a cell with a sign that says on the script that says suicidal watch, suicidal clothing, and a strip cell. That meaning he's not going to allow to have any undergarment that he can hang himself with. He's going to be in a garment that he can't harm himself with, and he's going to be in a cell where he wouldn't have any sheets and blankets that he can't use to hurt himself. You know, we will fully restrain him, but we would also conclude that he is psychotic and he's a danger to himself and he's a danger to others. That would have been our solution, and we would have put him in a way in an institution. Exactly. But Jesus, let's see how Jesus is going to handle this man. That's what I want you to see tonight. And then we have to begin to ask ourselves the question, is Jesus truly who he says he is in terms of his wisdom, being able to do assessment, being able to assess a situation and come up with the right treatment? So as we go through this, we're going to see in the very next verse, the very next verses, verses 5 to 30, verse 5 says, seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran. This is Mark chapter 5 now, and verse 6. He ran up and bowed down before him, and shouting with a loud voice, saying, "What business do we have with each other? Jesus, the Son of the Most High God, I implore you, by God, do not torment us." Now, look at the story. Remember, this is a man who the law of the day could not constrain him. They were afraid of him. He lived in the cemetery. He was a homeless individual. He was a danger to himself and to others. Now, Jesus comes to the scene. The man ran up to Jesus, identified Jesus, who Jesus was, and said, "You are the Son of the Most High. I implore you, do not torment me." For he had been saying to him, "Come out of this man." In other words, Jesus is saying to the man, instead of directly to the man, Jesus is speaking to someone in the man. Here's my question. Can you imagine me as a psychologist going up to someone and they are acting out, and instead of me addressing them, me start talking to them as though there is somebody in them? I wonder who's going to get a ride to the crazy house, to the mental asylum. Is it the man or me? I think both of us will be going. If I was in this particular situation, instead of recognizing the man who with this mental disorder, I begin to speak to someone in him, I think I would have been dismissed. No one would have even listened to me. But this is what Jesus is doing. Jesus is now talking to something or someone inside of the man, and is asking that person to come out. But here's what is listed: come out of the man you unclean spirit. So Jesus, in his assessment, diagnosed this man. The real situation is that there was something inside of the man controlling the man, and Jesus described it as an unclean spirit. The problem for us today is that we seem to think that these unclean spirits no longer exist in the 21st century. Part of it, I guess, is because we are so scientific. We've advanced so much because of the Enlightenment. We are so educated. We talk and brag about the educational revolution, where we have a smarter society. We have more college graduates. I mean, we're just moving along. Man is expanding. He's growing. He's smarter. He's wiser. And so because of all of this, we will see this story as nothing more than a myth and has nothing to do with intelligence. These are backward people, and therefore their assessment has no relevance in terms of where we are scientific today. We know better today. But here Jesus is saying to this unclean spirit to come out. Verse 9 says, and he was asking him, what is your name? Can you imagine this interaction? Jesus is asking, what is your name? Not only should you come out, diagnose him as an unclean spirit, then begin to ask, what is your name? And the man says, legions, meaning thousands, for we are many. Verse 10. And he began to implore him honestly to not send them out of the city. Isn't that interesting? Now, these demons are begging Jesus not to send them out, which tells me that the demons recognize the power of Jesus. And what I would want to say from this today, that we have a lot of demons in our societies today. We have a lot of demons in our homes. And I can break this down for you if you want me to break it down for you. Because when a grandfather decide to have sexual intercourse with his 4 or 5 year old granddaughter, I am here to tell you, I think that is demonic. And so we need to begin to understand that Jesus can handle this situation. But the reason that Jesus is no longer available to us because we have dismissed the reality of demonic powers that is in our society that continues to destroy our homes, destroy our people, destroy those things that are sacred. Satan has reversed everything that is sacred. We're living in a society where we're now calling wrong right. We twisted everything. And I'm saying to us that this was what was in the first century that is still here today. And some of the vicious nastiness that is happening in our homes, that, as a matter of fact, I was just speaking to a young lady today that is literally, she's at the place where she's about to be released, to be set free, and she's having an anxiety disorder because she is going back into a situation where she was so domestically abused. She showed me scars. A couple of her teeth have been knocked out. And now she's terrified of being free. It seems like being incarcerated. For the time she's been there, she had some peace. Can you imagine that to be incarcerated is a whole lot better than be in a home with a person that tells you they love you when they put you in the hospital and beat you up, knock your teeth out, anything you say. I mean, she tells stories that you'd want to cry with some of the story, what has happened to her. And I'm saying to us that level of behavior, when we can sink that low to disregard the humanity of another human being, I am saying to us that these unclean spirits are still very much a part of our lives, a part of our society. And until we wake up and recognize that they are not only forces of good in our world, but that there are also forces of evil that are destroying everything that is sacred and meaningful to all of us. So Jesus, these spirits recognize that Jesus had the power. And I'm saying to us tonight that Jesus had the power then, and Jesus has the power today. He can break whatever chain that is holding you down. Jesus can break those chains. Jesus can set you free from whatever. And I had to say to this young lady today that you can be free, that you can surround yourselves with people that can help you to be free, to empower you, and to give you the security that you need. Because sometimes people can become so alone that the only thing she has, and when you look at the psychosocial history of a person, her whole life was spent in a foster care system. Her whole life was spent in special education. Her whole life has been spent with psychotropic drugs, her whole life. So there's nothing to look forward to. And I'm saying that part of that pattern has been the satanic influences that has impacted her life to where she is a broken, beautiful woman, beautiful body, but her soul is broken. And I'm saying to us, it's broken by demonic forces. Not necessarily the forces, the demonic forces in herself, but the forces that she was surrounded with that has damaged her life so severely. So here the passage says, now there are a large swine. There were some pigs, and so the demons, listen what the demons are going to do. They're going to make a choice. And they're asking Jesus to put them in the pigs. And so the demons implored him. Notice the language. Demons implored him, saying, send us into the swine so that we can enter them. And Jesus, verse 13 of Mark chapter 5, Jesus gave them permission. Isn't that wonderful? Jesus can make a difference. He makes a difference then, and he can make a difference now in your home and in your life. And it says Jesus gave them permission, and coming out, the evil spirits entered into the swine, and of course the swine rushed into the ocean and they were drowned. And that's essentially the story. What I wanted, the reason that I brought this story, I wanted us to see that if that same scenario, and which we are, and this is not we have individuals like this. We have men who are running our streets naked, who are cutting themselves, who are self-destructive, who we are afraid of. And when we come to those people, we use the DSM manual to diagnose them, give them a psychiatric diagnosis. The only problem is, here's the problem. We give them the diagnosis, but it doesn't change anything. Jesus not only diagnosed the problem, Jesus was able to free the man. Jesus was able to ask the demons to go out, and the man immediately came to his senses, was dressed. As a matter of fact, as the story ends, it says that the man went ahead preaching the gospel because he wanted to join Jesus. Jesus said, no, I don't want you to come with me. I want you to go and tell the story, tell the good news to people, because there are too many others who are shackled to demons. Go tell them that they can be free. And I think that the message today is still the same, that you can be free. You can have a good marriage. You can have a peaceful home. You can give up drugs. You can give up alcohol. You can give up wickedness and nastiness. And you can become a whole, healthy individual where you can begin to appreciate yourself and to appreciate others. Jesus can do that for you. And so Jesus tells the man, look, I don't want you to come with me. Just go tell the story. What's the story? The story is you don't have to be dominated by satanic force. You can be free if you're willing to believe who I am. And that's the story. And I want you to understand the story, the message that Jesus asked this man to take was the message of how he became free from demonic forces. And Jesus is simply saying, I want you to go and tell others also who are in the same position like you are, so that they too can be free. And that's what we are about. We are here to infect others with that good news, to infect others with that message, to let them know that despite the bondage, despite the hopelessness, despite the meaninglessness of their lives, that they can find hope. And that's why this program is called The Full and Abundant Life, because Jesus came so that you can have the full and abundant life. And so that tonight is essentially the message. So I know that, like I said, there were some other areas that people want me to go into about the fact that demons don't exist and all of that stuff. And, I don't want to go down that road because I know that they exist. And so it'd be a waste of your time and my time to begin to go down that road. So let me talk a little bit about some of the I want to go to another passage in Mark chapter 6. And in this particular passage, in Mark chapter 6 and verse 7, and he summoned the 12 and began to, this is during the what we call the limited it's slipping my brain right now. But this is where Jesus sent out the 12 on this limited mission, and he told them to go, and he said he gave them authority over unclean spirits. Again, the question that I'm asking is, are these spirits sort of somehow no longer exist? What happened to the spirit world? We know in the first century they exist, and we saw the behavior of people. And I'm saying to you, as a matter of fact, if you think about why John the Baptist got his head cut off, and the reason that John the Baptist got his head cut off, because a man took his brother's wife. And John came up and said, man, that's a disgrace. How can you take your brother's wife? And of course, John lost his head. I'm saying to us that evil has always been, and evil still exists today. We have some of the most egregious wickedness that are being committed in our society. Not only is it being committed in our society in the sense of being committed in one's privacy, we've gotten to the point today where we now legalize nastiness. And we put it out there to where it's now a law with some of the most egregious, horrible things that people do. And so I'm saying to us that some of these same things exist. So Jesus gave the 12 apostles the authority to give authority over evil spirits. And sometimes we live in a society where we feel so powerless. Many of us today feel absolutely powerless as to what's happening in our world. There's nothing that we can do. And I see it, and one of the things I think that the latter part of my career, I think I'm seeing it even more so because of the kind of job that I do now, where every day I am in a situation where I'm seeing humans at their absolute worst. When I say absolute worst, I was joking to someone today. I said, it's interesting that this institution is actually their home, and when they go out, it's on their vacation. It's like me going to Hawaii, and when my money run out, I always come back home. And this institution, this prison is a home, and when they go out, it's like a vacation because sometimes they only stay like a week and they're back. They come back home. And what I'm saying is that we are seeing where I am. I get to see humans absolutely at their worst. And when you begin to see this, you begin to understand that there truly demonic forces among us. And we become so insensitive to it that we no longer recognize it. So in Mark 6, verses 12 and 13, it says, and they went out and preach that men should repent. Verse 13, and they were casting out many demons. The apostles were casting out many demons and were anointing with oil many sick and healing. In other words, these brothers were what I would call psychiatry on wheels. Well, actually, they didn't have wheels. It was like psychiatry on feet, because that's what they were. Because they went from tongue to tongue. That's what they did. Like what we have here, psychiatry, and we have what we call the mobile team. It's a van equipped with a psychiatrist, a nurse practitioner, or a nurse practitioner, and a social worker, a medical team, and they go from village to village in different places and take care of people. That these 12 apostles were like that. They went on their feet to different communities, bringing healing, bringing hope, casting out demons from lives, giving people back a sense of their humanity. That is what the gospel message is about. It's like a mobile health facility, which all inclusive. That these brothers were casting out demons, they were healing the sick, they were doing everything. And these were not college graduates. These weren't the educated elite. These were ordinary folks vested with the power of God, the Holy Spirit in their lives, went creating in an environment, giving back people their humanity, where they can live above nastiness and decent kinds of behaviors and be able to emerge in the way that God expected them to emerge. And so I see them as a healing, a mobile unit, where they went healing and helping people and giving them back their lives, where there was a sense of wholeness wherever they went. And that's what we are about today. We ought to be bringing hope and meaning to people. We have the gospel, the power of the gospel. We are God's vehicle, where we go in a mobile way. But sometimes, we want to anchor down in a building with a sign out front, and we want people to come to us. And when you look at the story of the New Testament, it was never people coming to us. It was always they, in a mobile way, going from village to village, taking the good news, bringing hope to people. Because people that are hopeless tend to be stuck where they are. I hear story every day. I had someone was telling me just this week that she actually turned herself in because she was just tired of life. She was in her bed, couldn't care for her children. She was just tired. And so she turned herself in, and she's now believing that action saved her life and the life of her children. We're talking about turning yourself in to be incarcerated because her life was so horrible. And now she's got herself together. Now she's willing to get ready to go back out into the world. And so what I'm saying is that the gospel, what we have is this unadulterated gospel that can transform the lives of others. We are the vehicle of all the goodness of God. And that's what we ought to take, instead of waiting for people to come to us at our building on a Sunday morning. Do you really believe what happened on Monday? There are people that are really suffering, that are in pain. And we have to become more mobile as these 12 men, that they went everywhere taking the gospel, not sitting somewhere hoping for people to come to them. They went instead. And that's what they were commissioned to do. And that's precisely what they did. Let me just check and see if we have any comments. Kamal, I think we don't have any comments, do we?
No, we don't.
Okay, good. All right, so let me continue here. So and I'm just going to continue with a lot of these passages that are here that I think can help us. Another passage again, it's the healing. Another situation where Jesus healed a young girl, and this mother came to Jesus, and of course, he wasn't a Jewish mother, you know. And sometimes, you know, when you're vested in your children, it's not a matter of your color. It's not a matter of your education. When you're vested in your children, you're going to do whatever, and you're going to cross whatever line that's necessary for you to cross when it comes to your health of your children and doing what's in the best interest of your children. So this was a Gentile woman. She wasn't a Jewish woman. Jesus was a Jewish person. But you see, because of the life of her child, she was willing to cross whatever line, whatever barrier, whatever boundary, because she loved her child, her daughter. So she went to Jesus. And there's a troubling statement here, of course, in Mark chapter 7, verses 24 following. And now the woman was a Gentile woman, and she kept asking him to cast out the demon from her daughter. I want you to understand something, that the mother herself had concluded that it was a demon. Everybody in the first century knew what a demon looked like. We are the only people that don't seem to be able to figure out what a demon looked like, you know, when we see one. So the woman said, look, my daughter have a demon. And a lot of us, especially within the African-American community, we don't even want to be associated with mental health. That's why we don't seek mental health, because of the stigma that's connected with it. But see, this woman didn't care. What she cared about was the life of her daughter. So she went to Jesus and said, look, my daughter have a demon, and I want you to help my daughter. And of course, Jesus kind of said his statement here in Mark that you know, and he said to her, let the children be satisfied first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw to the dogs. Of course, I'm not going to unpack that statement for you, because I know it has caused a lot of controversy, a lot of debates for Jesus to be able to make that kind of a statement. But I'm not going to unpack it. I'll let you unpack it. Mark chapter 7 and verse 27. But I'll just move on to verse 28. But she answered and said to him, yes, Lord, but even the dogs under the table feed from the children's crumbs. It's as though this woman is saying, Lord, I don't care if I have to go under the table and eat the crumbs. I will do it proudly if it's going to help my daughter to live. That's what I'm saying. This is the kind of love and investment that we need parents to have for their children, to make the sacrifice for their welfare, to ensure their security, their development, their healthy growth and development, to make the sacrifice. That is why domestic violence is such an insult on our children. That is why incest is such a disgrace and such a nastiness in our homes, destroying the souls and the character of our children, putting scars on our children's soul that will go through them their entire life, where they become drug addicts, where they become all kinds of dysfunctional individuals because of those formative years that was taken from them and damaged them by people who were supposed to care and protect them. But this woman is saying, Lord, I don't care if I have to crawl under the table and eat the dust of the table. My daughter deserves that, and I will do that. You know, we have a lot of dads out there, they couldn't care less about their children tonight. Do you know how many children tonight are being abandoned, forsaken, that parents are not there for them? And a lot of these kids tonight are broken. We have children that are homeless in other parts of the world, have no mom or dad to go home to, out on the streets begging. We see it even, I would suspect, even in small islands such as St. Vincent, that there are children, that there are still the haves and the have not. And of course, we say, well, they deserve it. But I don't think children deserve to be in a situation where they don't have food, where they don't have adequate health care. We still have facilities, homes in St. Vincent that don't even have indoor plumbing still. Where we have situation of poverty in certain areas. And sometimes we celebrate, how much we've done, and we always tend to look from the top sometimes. But sometimes there are real suffering even here in the United States with its affluence, its wealth, lavishness. There are people tonight that are homeless. As a matter of fact, I was helping a young man who was about to be discharged. And he was panicking because I have no funds, I have no home, I'll be homeless. And they're gonna put me out. When they put me out of here, I'll be on the street. And he said to me, he said, when they picked me up during the summer, I had a pair of shorts on. That's all I have. And they put me out in the winter. I have no clothes. What am I going to do? There are real suffering in our world. And sometimes we insulate ourselves from these things. And so this story about this woman, where Jesus said to her, well, we can't do this. We can't give our good stuff to the dog. And the lady said, look, lady, I don't care. Even the dog eats what's on the floor. I don't mind doing that because my daughter is more important to me. And so in verse 29, but she answered and said to him, Lord, Lord, but even the dogs under the table feed on the children's crumbs. Verse 29, and he said to her, because of this, I am going back to your home, And she found that the child laying in bed, that the demon had left her. Because of her humbleness, because of her attitude, she was willing, she didn't allow pride to get in the way. She said, my child comes first. I don't care if I have to go under the table. And Jesus said, go home when you get there. And when she got there, the demon was gone. That's a good story. It's a miracle. But I want to tell you something. That kind of a transformation can happen today in your home with your children. If you're going to have that kind of faith to believe that the Son of God, the great physician, can transform your life, that things can be better. If you're willing to pay the price, make the sacrifice, like this woman. She left her daughter at home and went into a community where she would not welcome. The Jewish people were not welcome among that group of people. But she gave up everything because her daughter meant something to her. And she got everything. She was able to redeem the life of her daughter. And Jesus reached out to her. And like I said, I know there's a lot of issue on this particular passage. And I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to try to unpack it, But I want to just say this much, that this woman loved her daughter and was willing to do whatever it took in order to bring hope and guidance and recovery for her daughter. And if you guys want to read more of that particular passage, it's actually Mark chapter 7, verses 24 to verse 30. And that's kind of where that passage is. And like I said, you can unpack it. And there's a lot of interesting thing in that particular passage. But I notice, as usual, we have about 4 minutes in the program. And time, whenever we're doing this program, time just seems to fly so fast. And so I was just trying. Let me just try to look at the Facebook feed, make sure we have no comments there. Okay, folks are just watching or listening, and so that's okay. Kamal, and you have no thing there either, right?
No, I don't have anything for you this
Okay.
evening.
Okay, good. So let me just quickly try to summarize some of this by throwing in some passages, because I believe that what's really important, there are many things when it comes to breaking, demonic forces in one's life. And at the top of that list has to do with truth. You have to begin to internalize some basic values. And one of that is Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And the truth tonight is that Jesus is the Son of God. He is the great I am. He is the shepherd. He's the bread of life. Jesus is the resurrection. And based on who he is, you need to internalize that truth. Get to know him. And once you get to know him, I believe that you can climb mountains, whatever obstacles that you may find yourself in, whatever hopelessness, whatever discouragement, whatever despair. I believe that the good news, the gospel, the power of God can make a difference in your life if you're willing to trust him and to believe in him. And of course, it's not just about believing in him, but like this woman who actually came and said to Jesus, "Look, I am willing to kneel and to go under the table and take up what's fall off the table for the dogs, because my daughter is important to me and I want her to have life." And she said, my daughter has a demon. And Jesus said, when you get home, the demon will be gone. That is faith. And I believe we need to have faith to begin to believe in each other. But more importantly, we need to believe that God is a God who makes promises and that he will fulfill all of his promises and that he can be trusted completely. And that is basically part of the process in being able to extinguish the demons in our homes, the demons in our lives. And I believe that that can happen. And we need to begin to recognize that. And if we can, I believe we can have a better home and a better world in which to live. But of course, this is a message I think that sometimes even God's people are beginning to be silent on. It's as though we kind of preaching, the good news, but at the same time we deny the existence of demons and evil spirits, and we tend to we tend to interpret everything when it comes to human behavior from a psychological standpoint, instead of looking at the fact that we all have a soul, and money can't fix the soul. Money can damage the soul, but money can never fix a damaged soul. It is only the blood of Jesus can do that. And so tonight, I want to thank all of you for being a part of the program. And next Wednesday, we'll be back here again, and hopefully we will continue this particular discussion. And so I really want to thank WeFM. I want to thank Kamal for being here with us tonight. And for all of those of you on Facebook, it's certainly a privilege to have all of you. Classy, it's a privilege to have you. Julie, it's a privilege to have you. Estelle, Yolanda, Stephanie, all of you guys. It's great to have all of you here tonight. So bye-bye. See you all again next week, same time, same place. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Claudius Davis. And certainly a pleasure having you each and every Wednesday here on the Clean Fresh Song for your Full and Abundant Life radio program. Well, folks, do join Dr. Claudius once again next Wednesday, God's willing, from 9 until 10 for another edition of the program, the Full and Abundant Life radio program. Well, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it's also time